what's going on, guys? I am here today with Conservation Warden Evan Fox, and today he's going to be breaking down the top 10 fishing violations here in Wisconsin. And make sure you stick around to the end, because he's also going to tell you what you should do if a warden contacts you in the field.
In my hand, I have a list of the top 10 violations by number of citations issued for us for 2024. Number one, far and away, is fish without a license. More often than not, it's an intentional violation where people might only be expecting to fish a few weeks out of the year. They'll go up to their lake cabin or something and they're on vacation for maybe a week, so they'll see if they can get away with it for that time. What I do and what I tell people to do is, I've got a calendar on my phone that can set reminders. I set a reminder for the middle of March to let me know that my license are expiring, and that's when I'll go in. Our new license by then are all online, able to be bought. Get a good reminder, there's no way I can forget.
That's a great idea.
Number two on the list is possession of an illegal sized fish. So
okay.
Generally a short fish or a fish in a slot. The usual issue I see is people forget to bring a measuring device. They'll use the visual estimation method, which they always think it's bigger than what it actually is.
So typical fisherman.
Yes. So make sure you have a tape measure or a bump board. Another common thing we see is people not knowing how to measure the fish. So if they're using a tape measure, they'll put the fish down and they'll put a tape measure over the top of the fish. You add some curve in there and you can get some extra length that way. The correct way to measure the fish is by the jaw or the nose, whatever sticks out to the front the furthest. Put that at the end of your bump board and then compress the tail, and whatever the longest part of it is, that's the length of your fish.
I actually have a video I will link in the description on how to properly measure a fish on a bump board, so that doesn't happen to you. So thanks, Evan, that's good to know.
Number three, possess fish in excess of the daily bag or possession limit. Usually people will know the statewide bag limit, but each lake can have a different restriction. So the trick on that is to read the signs at the landings.
Sure.
Each landing at a public landing, they'll have a restriction if the walleye restriction is different than the statewide. And then another thing people forget too is, unlike in some other states, we can't group bag in Wisconsin. So if you have a 3-fish walleye limit and you're fishing with your friend and you catch 4 out of the 6, you're over the limit.
So is there a way that people should know how to keep fish separate so we know whose is whose? Like, can we put them all in one live well?
You can put them all in one live well, but you're going to have to know based off of if you mark down what your size measurement is for your fish. But you just got to know a way of which fish is yours. Number 4 is fish with more than 3 hooks, baits, or lures, generally called overlining. This is one of my most common violations I see here. It's typically an ice fishing violation. Usually someone will have 3 tip-ups out. Fishing will get a little slow, they want to see how the panfish bite's going. They'll leave their tip-ups in and put a jig down. Not allowed to do that. There's generally no excuse for it because we allow 3 lines anyway, or some of our neighboring states don't.
Sure.
So we'll generally see that, or someone will be fishing with someone else. They'll want to go into town to get some grub. They'll leave their 3 lines in, and then one person's left with 6.
Sure.
Every now and then people will try to get a little sneaky and they'll put more than one lure on like a line itself.
Sure.
So you got them spread out over the course of a longer line.
Yep.
If you have 3 hooks on one line, that's all you get. So that's why in our statute, it's called 3 hooks, baits, or lures is what we're allowed, not the overlining, which it's normally called.
Right. It's kind of a misnomer.
Yeah. So if you're out, say, ice fishing and you've got a tip-up down, you can have one lure that has multiple treble hooks on that one lure.
Yep.
But you're not going to be able to have 2 feet above it another lure, another bait, another shiner with 2 treble hooks in it.
Okay, and have it count as one.
Correct.
One line.
Yep. So you might only have 1 line out, but you could have 3 or potentially more than 3 hooks, baits, or lures on that line.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's good. Not everybody knows that, so that's really good information.
Yeah.
What is considered a line out of the water? If I reel my tip up and have the minnow up in the ice hole, would you still cite somebody for that typically, or would that be considered out of commission?
Yep, that's you're not actually fishing with that. There's no way for a fish to take the hook, bait, or lure.
Okay.
So it's going to depend on your warden, but at that point it's pretty obvious you're not intentionally trying to catch a fish. The odds of you catching a walleye up in the hole, probably not the best.
Okay, well that's good to know too, because sometimes you just want to, like you say, you just want to jig for a minute, and it's just a pain to take the minnow off and put it back in the bucket and then put the tip up somewhere where it's not going to freeze up on you. So that's good to know.
Yeah, number 5 on the list is fish without a trout stamp.
When are you allowed to fish for trout in Wisconsin without a trout stamp?
Never.
Never.
Okay, so if you're fishing for trout, if you're actively pursuing trout or you catch a trout and you want to keep it, you'll need to have a trout stamp. We do have 2 different trout stamps, one for inland, streams and then one for the Great Lakes.
Okay.
Depending on where you're fishing, you're going to need the appropriate one.
So I imagine that trips people up sometimes too. If they have an inland trout stamp, they assume they're good for the Great Lakes or vice versa.
Yep, and then it all depends too, is it a stream that goes into one of the Great Lakes? If it's a tributary to Lake Superior, you'll need the inland, but if it's a tributary for the Great Lake, Michigan or Green Bay, you'll need a Great Lakes.
Okay, well, that's not confusing.
Can't make it that easy.
No, right. Okay, that's good to know too. Now, do kids need a trout stamp even though they don't need a license under 16? Do they still need a trout stamp, or is that included in their
No, and
license?
then also if you have a family license, so you buy a family license, one trout stamp counts for the family license.
Oh, okay. That's also good to know.
Number 6 on the list is one I typically don't see a ton of, but fishing in a refuge. So we've only got one refuge here in Washburn County. It doesn't really get fished at all. But other parts of the state, especially during some of the fish runs, it gets hit pretty hard.
Yeah, I can imagine like the Green Bay tributaries where those guys are stacked up below the dams. They get pushing a little too close once in a while, I imagine.
Yep, they get a little too tempted. There's a ton of fish there. The reason why we have the fish refuges is to keep the fish spawning and nursery grounds available for harder species.
It's usually posted very, very well.
Yep, and there's a list online of every single fish refuge in Wisconsin as well.
Okay, good. All right, number 7.
Number 7, it's another one that I see quite a bit up here, is fish with unattended lines. Generally where we'll see this is people ice fishing, and winter camping's a big deal now on the ice.
Yep.
People, if you plan to fall asleep, you're going to need to have a device on your lines that allows you to know immediately when you have a strike. So if you go to sleep and you've only got lights on your tip-ups, there's no way for you to know when you have a strike. Another issue we see is if you're your lake house or your cabin and you've got tip-ups out and you're watching the Packer game, you're doing anything else, you're not paying attention to your tip-ups, you need to respond immediately to an indication of a strike. We don't have a specific time restriction. Our statute reads an immediate response to an indication of a strike. So we also don't have a certain limit of how far away you can be. If you get an indication of a strike, you need to start working towards that tip-up, whatever else, as soon as possible.
Sure.
So it's not finish whatever chore you're doing, not finish whatever drink you've got in hand.
What if it's the 4th quarter and it's a tight game?
Well, nowadays we've got pause on TV. I didn't have that growing up, so no excuses there.
There we go. All right, so as long as you hear that and you're starting to move in that direction immediately, that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, if you're going into town to get a bite at the local diner, does not count.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. And you guys, I will link down below the Vulture Systems indicators that I use. They are the most accurate and the most reliable for this type of situation. So if you're out there night camping, if you're in your cabin and you can't see those lights or you're sleeping, 100% the Vulture is the way to go. So I'll link those down below. Been using them for years, never had a failure. So that's perfect for that type of situation.
Number 8 is fail to release a foul hooked fish, otherwise known as snagging.
Yes, this is prime time of year for that.
Yes, they're working really hard over on the east part of the state for that. Generally, you're not going to be allowed to have a large treble hook with a lead weight on the end, ripping it across the water. It usually seems fairly obvious, but yeah, during the walleye, trout, and whitefish runs, it's pretty common. One other thing though that some people don't know is if you're out fishing, you catch a fish, you land it, and you notice that it's not hooked in the mouth, it's considered a foul hooked fish.
Correct.
And you have to immediately release it.
Yep, I just had that happen to me. I was just in Green Bay last week and there was walleyes just stacked up in the shallows, and I was running just a stick bait, and you're inevitably going to hook some. There's so many fish, you're going to foul hook some. Immediately unhook them, release them, no problem. But if you try and sneak one of those into the live well, not a good idea.
Yep, some people get a little too tempted. It's a really nice fish, but if it's not caught in the mouth, gotta let it go.
Perfect.
Next one is number 9, and that's fish by means other than hook and line. Generally what we see is you're using a landing net or a cast net to catch fish. You might be a little upset you can't pull that smallmouth or large bluegill off of a bed, so people get too tempted and they'll use the landing net to catch the fish.
Okay.
It's not allowed. We'll also see it with cast nets, especially on trout streams where I know there's going to be a really nice brook trout in that eddy, so I'll throw the cast net in there. That's not allowed. Cast nets and other nets actually aren't even permissible on bodies of water.
Right, anywhere in Wisconsin, correct? Yeah.
Yep, there's only one outlying body of water with Iowa that cast nets are allowed on.
Okay, and I've used cast nets a ton in Florida, and they're super effective for catching bait, but you can't use them here. So
not here.
That's good to know.
One other thing that some wardens have seen is catching people using firearms to shoot at fish. That certainly qualifies for not hunting with fish with a hook and line, but we don't see that too often.
Okay,
thankfully.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's probably pretty dangerous too. I'm guessing, shooting directly at
there's some other issues to go along with that.
So what about by hand? What's the regulations on catching fish? Like if you get close enough and you can grab one?
It's got to be a rough fish.
Okay.
In order to catch it by hand. To go with that, like some people during the sucker spawning season that like to go by hand, you still need a fishing license for it. We'll actually generally see, most people forget it's the early time of year, they don't need the new fishing license, they think they're catching rough fish by hand, you don't need it, but you still need
a fishing license. Okay, good to know, perfect. And finally, what's number 10?
Last but not least on the list is fish during the closed season.
Okay, I would have expected that to be higher up. I'm surprised that's actually number 10.
It's changed a little bit recently with our catch and release bass season. Late ice and early spring. So people are allowed to go out and still tip up fish after the close of game season. Where people run into issues is they catch a really nice walleye or something and they get too tempted to keep it. And it looks like it'd be a great dinner, but if that's the case, gotta leave it.
If you see somebody fishing, is there a way or a method that they could be using that's obviously not targeting bass that would make it a citable offense, or do they have to admit it? I'm
generally gonna talk to someone and figure out what their actual goal is. I mean, if you're running a jig with a crappie minnow, it's probably not going to be for bass, but I'm going to have to talk to you about it. Also, some guys like to get an early start to muskie season. And if a warden sees you doing a figure 8 before the opener of muskie season, we'll probably come talk to you. So that brings up another question. What would constitute to you, for instance, catching a walleye that's a really nice fish out of the season, say we're fishing for bass, and we want to take some pictures of it? How long can we hold on to that fish and take pictures? Are we even allowed to take pictures if we caught a fish that we can't be targeting? What's kind of your take on that? The way statute reads, it's an immediate release. It's just like with your sturgeon. If you catch a sturgeon, we want that released as soon as possible for the fish's health. Sure. Obviously, if you're looking at a really nice walleye and you want a couple pictures as proof that you caught it, it's going to be up to your local warden. We understand if you got a 29, 30-inch walleye, I'm going to want pictures of that too. Right. So we just want you to put the fish back as soon as possible. Sure. Yeah, that's good. And again, we've talked about this on the channel a lot. You know, just handling fish well is super important in that situation. You have to let the fish go, keep it in the water as long as possible, take it out really quickly, take your pictures, get it back in the water. Don't put it in your live well, I'm guessing, at any point. Do not do that. Yes. Because that's going to look like you're about to take it home. So that's one exception for that case. So there you go, guys. There's your top 10 citations here in Wisconsin. So you kind of know what to look for and what to avoid and how to avoid those. Thanks again for coming out, Evan. Not a problem. We really appreciate it. And most of these conservation officers are just really good guys. They love the outdoors just like we do. And as long as you're following those laws and rules, it can be a very positive experience for both parties to run into a warden in the field. And that brings up the last point here. So if we're approached by a game warden or conservation officer in the field, what should we do to make sure that that's a good experience? Great question. Easiest thing to do is just listen to what we're asking for. Okay. Whether you're fishing or hunting anything else, just wait for us to ask what we'd like. If you're hunting, obviously we don't want you working the firearm and unloading it. Fishing, generally I'll just say, hey, I'm going to come up to this side of your boat. So if you have any lines, let me know. I don't want to be cutting your lines, anything like that. And then if I'm going to ask you where the fish are, just let me know. I might ask where your life vests are, or how your fire extinguisher is doing, anything like that. It usually goes pretty quick, and the main thing I want to know is how's it fishing. So do you have any last words, Evan, for us today? Yeah, for sure. Just like you said, we enjoy fish stories too, so come talk to us if you see us out and about. Also, if you have any trouble deciphering some of the rules and regulations, feel free to give us a call. We'd much rather talk to you over the phone and educate you on something rather than see you in the field and have to talk to you about something you're doing wrong. Sure. Also, if you or anyone else that you know is interested in becoming a Wisconsin Conservation Warden, we're hiring right now. Oh, perfect. Our hiring process just opened up. Applications are due by the end of May 6th. Okay. So if you can help us out, the more applications, the better. We're just looking for people that are able to talk with people that enjoy the natural resources and want to work by themselves. All right, that's perfect. Well, thanks again, Evan. I appreciate you coming out. Thank you. And thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Get hooked up.